Welcome everyone to the interview series from the Journey of Riches series, Building Self-Confidence. I'm here with one of the authors, my co-author, Heather Price, who's shamanic healer, practitioner, teacher, and writer. So awesome to be chatting with you today, Heather.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for inviting me to share the journey we recently had together as authors. Yeah, it was really lovely. I had a fantastic time, and Journey to Riches talking about building self-confidence. So that was a
Yes.
wonderful journey.
Yeah, well, it's a journey of riches. A funny story, it started out as a journey to riches
Oh, right.
before the first book was published in 2015. But I changed it because I thought that the two basically led to it that maybe something was missing. You know, that
Oh,
you're
yes.
going to something, but actually,
Yeah.
journey of is, a richness of a conversation, richness of healing, richness of writing, richness of connection, richness of a lake or travel, culture. And we can have availability to those things right now. So I wanted to, yeah, basically a journey of riches, and there's nothing missing in our life. And I believe that that's really a lot of the work that you do right through your healing is showing people that they have these things already right here, right now.
Yes, that was an interesting point that was made by quite a few of the authors, actually. I remember the first one who I'll have to refer to my notes because there's so many. There's 15
Yeah,
of us.
James Renshield was the first chapter.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
James.
that's really right.
Yeah, James referred to, and also I think the one after him were agreeing with me that we're born with self-confidence. We're born with everything that we need to have and need through life, but we don't always have the opportunity to hold on to it. We may go through illness or trauma of some sort as a child, particularly, and then we suppress those innate qualities and gifts. We suppress self-confidence, self-knowing, the truth of who we are. And I call that the wounded heart consciousness versus the true heart consciousness that we're born with. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that.
Mm.
Yeah, that we basically, when we're born, right, we have that open heart, open to infinite possibilities, unlimited potential. And then, through the process of our humanness, learning to be human, then, yeah, a lot of the duality is formed. So,
Yeah, the duality of those two hearts that you become less confident through suppression, through actually forgetting who you really are. And the journey of the shamanic practitioner or shamanic healer is to assist people to retrieve those parts of their soul. You hear of probably the most common term is soul retrieval that you might hear.
yeah, so
And yeah, so it's about, excuse me if I had a little cough then. It's about knowing that you do, having the confidence and knowing that you do have more there. And you can go on life's journey to discover them, or you can go to somebody who knows how to do that. I mean, it's not only the only place you go to. In fact, NLP is, I think, a modern version of shamanic wisdom. I've studied it and neuro-linguistic programming, and there are other beautiful therapeutic processes that have come out of the shamanic ancient wisdom teachings. However, I'm one of the old school in that I kind of like to know the roots of things, and like to understand where everything comes from. But for me, it was more a call to this, and that I couldn't deny through my innate gifts, which I was born with, which were the gifts of sight. So I could see I had a guardian angel. I could see my guardian angel. I had a spirit sister. I could see her, and I talked to her for quite a long time. And I didn't realize other people couldn't see them. So I had an insightful inner world. And so it's natural that I would then go looking for, how would you put it, a type of healing that relates to my true nature, which is intuitive and connected to the inner world. Mm. Yeah.
Beautiful. And what are some of the, I guess, doubts and your ability so did you learn to suppress those gifts and ability through fear of being exposed or judged or?
Oh, absolutely. For the first, probably, I guess, 5 years, it wasn't so hard for me because first probably 3 years, I could talk to my sisters and my mother and tell them what I was seeing, and nobody really said much. I don't remember ever being shut off or shut down. However, there came a time when I realized that I was doing things like stopping watches and clocks, and mum and dad stopped giving me things like cameras and, and they'd touch me and they all get electric shocks. And so I started to see that I was a bit weird, you know, and they would say, oh, don't touch Heather, she'll give you a shock, or, so, and later on when I entered a married life, I broke every single appliance that was gifted to us in the first year, like mix masters, fridges, anything that was electric just stopped working. So I had all this incredible electricity in my body. For some reason, I didn't stop my family's, my childhood family's fridges and things, but it must have been some sort of medicine or energy that I came into when I sort of set out on my own. And then I started to break appliances, which was really difficult. And I couldn't open a farm gate I lived on the land, and I couldn't open a farm gate without using my scarf or a jumper because I get a terrible shock from the metal. So I began to realize, it took a long time, but in my late 20s, I had a kind of like a breakdown of sorts. My nervous system gave in, and I used to meditate quite a lot, and I went on this walk into nature with a realization that I had to accept who I was at that point. I had all this stuff still happening to me. But that's when it really started, was when I went on this walk and I sat down and meditated. I'd been reading Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life, that everybody, well, not everybody, but most people kind of come across. And she talked about positive affirmations mostly, but I was also aware of then that I had this rich inner world that was okay, because she was talking about healing from inside out, which lots of the authors of this book talk about that, healing from inside out. And I began to think, well, the doctors can't fix this nervous disorder that I have that stopped me from being able to speak clearly. I was stuttering. I was quite a nervous mess. And I went on this meditation walk, and I got to this beautiful little grove with a big bloodwood tree sitting in front of me as I was meditating. And then I had this journey of shape shifting completely to the size of an ant. And I walked over to the tree as an ant and crawled around the base of the tree. I could see, I wasn't an ant, I was a human, but I could see the ants the same size as me. And I felt like an ant, but I had this shape shifting kind of experience, which I learned to call it that, where I actually physically shape shifted into a different size and possibly an ant, but it just felt like me. And then I came out of that and thought, wow, that was pretty trippy. And started to think, if I can do that while I was in that state, I actually was told by the tree that I would heal, and that I had to, I can't remember the exact messages, but I got this really strong feeling that the tree represented my ancestors. It was a bloodwood tree, makes sense now. And that I was being told by the guardians of the tree, that the spirit of the tree, that I would be okay. And I had to keep meditating, use natural processes like teas, herbal teas. And I did all that. And I was well very shortly after that. It all came back. I was able to heal myself from that particular ailment. And from there, it just went on, and I just grew and grew. And I still had a lot of medical problems and things that I'd had since I was a young child to deal with. And so one by one, I began to heal different things that would come up. Usually went the medical way first, and then I would challenge that because it wouldn't work. And then I'd find my inner healing was the way to go. And it just grew and grew to the point where I had a very rich inner world, and I could see guides and teachers and hear them, and they taught me how to become a healing practitioner. But that came a bit later. That came in my that I think I was in my late 30s when that message came. Yeah, but that's how it sort of started, that world of the shamanic way.
Wow. And so, what was your vocation at that time? Or what sort of things were you healing yourself from?
Okay, so my vocation at that time was mostly mother. I had 3 young children, and I was also working on the land with my husband of that time, who I divorced in my, I think, early 40s, late 30s. That's another story. But at that time, I saw myself as a grazier, a woman on the land. I used to work outside with the sheep. I used to muster the sheep on my horse, or help on the motorbike or whatever. And I taught my children how to ride and how to drive and how to shoot, all the things you have to do to survive on the land, as well as how to play cricket and football. 3 boys.
Of course, yes.
And didn't have any brothers, but I was a very active mum. So I grew our vegetables for the whole family with my ex-husband. He was very good at that. And he taught me a lot about living on the land. I'd always lived on the land. I was born in a country town, out on a property, one of 5 girls. But our father believed that boys inherited the properties, and you didn't teach them girls anything much, because why would you need to? So that was a bit of a shame. And so
And
I
where
did,
was this? Is
yeah,
this like country New South Wales, country Queensland?
northern New South Wales, yeah. And
Whereabouts?
right out, well, the first place where I was brought up was at a place called Moree, which is northern
Ah,
New South Wales. You
yeah,
know where that
cotton,
is?
cotton. Yeah, famous for
Cotton.
cotton. Yeah.
Yeah, in those days it was famous for wool
Oh,
and
okay.
cattle and wheat, mostly wheat. Dad had a big wheat property.
Okay.
Um, so he eventually gave in. Like I didn't give up. I kept asking him. And when I think I was about 13, I convinced him that it would be very practical to have his daughters driving tractors. We're all good drivers, And so I was allowed to drive the tractor and farm the land. But we did also have a grandfather in our family who used to take us riding and mustering. So he taught us a lot about that. Um, and it wasn't until I married and worked on the land that I got to know all the things like drenching sheep. I used to just be out in the yards, kind of like shoeing them up. But I got to do everything. I got to build fences. I was taught a lot, by my ex-husband. He was great. And mostly what he taught me about, I didn't do a lot of that kind of labor with children, but I managed to fit quite a bit in. But what he taught me most about was birds and trees, like kind of, Dad didn't really have as much knowledge around those sorts of things. He didn't identify, he'd tell us the basic birds, but we had 75 different kinds of birds. I think there was probably more than that, but I know that we did count all the ones that were around the house, and we had that many. So I taught my children that as well, and my youngest one used to go off at every opportunity when he was about 5 or 6. He put his binoculars around his neck and his bird book under his arm, pack his lunch, and he'd go out for hours. And the other boys were helping their father a lot, but they did all that as well. And they're all living in the city, but they know a lot about the bush, and much more than I did really at their age. Although I knew a lot, it wasn't sort of the nature wisdom that I came to understand was so important for our own healing. And the reason I mention that is later I became to understand that we have another world of consciousness that relates to us through nature. So I came to understand that birds didn't just show up, they showed up with a message, or they showed up at a certain time to give you a bit of spirit, a bit of confidence in what you were doing, and that nature would send signs to help you to elevate your perception of life and to rise above the human consciousness. you know, we have wonderful helpers in the natural world to do that. And the spirits that are around the trees are the same. The wind is the same, it has a spirit, and that everything has a living spirit. And that people that pass on can even come back and embody those kind of animals or trees, or to talk to you or to communicate with you. So I've learned a lot about that after I left the land. But while I was on there, when I say on the property, riding on horses in nature, the stirring started to happen, and I started to remember rather than learn. It was like started to realize that the trees had spirits even before anyone ever mentioned that to me. It all came from within, and I knew that where the burial grounds had been once for the original peoples, I had a sense of, you know, what the trees were representing. It was just really amazing. I used to feel the spirits a lot and sort of sense them, and they'd talk to me in their own way through the wind. Yeah, so all that began out on the land, and then later on when I moved to the city, for my son's health mostly. My youngest son had an accident when he was very young on the farm, and he had head injury, and it led to him needing a lot of care. Yeah, so when I left the land, I had to replicate that, find a way to have that same kind of connection with nature. And I used to get up at 5 o'clock every morning and go for a walk before the kids stirred down to the ocean, close to where I lived, or wherever I lived. I lived in many places, and sit on the earth and sit on the land and listen to the messages, listen to the wind, and my spirit guides would talk to me and teach me about the inner world. Yeah, so.
Wow, sounds amazing. And so, where was your property that you had with where you raised your children and with your marriage?
My children were raised on another property further north on the border of Queensland. Yeah, so at a
Was it
place,
inland or was it by
oh,
the sea?
no, inland, about 7 hours inland, and we had rivers on the property. We didn't have rivers. We had lots of creeks crossing the road. It was a very isolated property. It had 8 gates to get to the house, and we had sheep and cattle, and very little farming because we were both very nature lovers. You know, we didn't like to farm for that reason, because we were the only property really that had a tiny bit of farming. All the other properties were developing their land, and eventually a lot of it's been turned into cotton country, but like around the area anyway. Yeah, but we didn't want to farm it. We wanted to keep it for the animals and nature, the way it was sort of like originally, so that there'd be somewhere for the birds to go. And we managed to do that until we had to sell the property when there was in about 1994, I guess, it got really bad. When I think 9 people walked off their land on our road, like the wool prices collapsed, the sheep prices collapsed, the cattle prices collapsed. We didn't have any wheat, we didn't have any farming, or very little, and we didn't have an income. So we sort of went through 5 years of really, up from the 1990s really to 1994, where we sold one property where we moved to, and then we had to go back to the original property that was very isolated. And then we had to sell that as well, because I think we were paying 24% interest to the bank. So we actually were clear of our debt at one stage, and then because we didn't have any income, we got into this role with the bank, and they were, without, you know, having any control, soon we sort of had a huge mortgage again, and you know, we couldn't start again. It was just too hard with the way things were in those days with the banks. They didn't give you any leeway, or you couldn't sort of have a moratorium on a national disaster like you can these days a bit more. Yeah, no, the government wasn't very forthcoming. They did have they had some help for educating your children, which was very handy for us. Yeah.
And what did that experience teach you? And did you be able to move through that with more confidence in yourself? Like, did it lead to something better?
I think what happened was I didn't have a great deal of confidence as a child, mostly because I was different. And also I did have some trauma that I went through as a child. There was, you know, a lot of trauma in our house. We had 9 people living in the house. My grandparents lived with us. And Mum and Dad were very unhappily married. Dad was an alcoholic. There were all sorts of pressures as well, you know, and I had a lot of isolation. I didn't have a lot of confidence as a child. I had an older sibling who I didn't ever feel I could measure up to, you know, and I sort of felt isolated in the family. Yeah, so that wasn't a great start, but it did give me a great start in that I had a rich inner world. So I didn't go outside of myself for my affirmations. I had this internal support. I could see my angels. I used to dissociate a lot during trauma, and I used to go to the horses. I went to the horses and I'd sit on the paddock by myself. We were given a lot of freedom in those days, and I'd wander over to the horse paddock and make daisy chains, and I'd sit down and the horses would come and chew my hair, and I'd just talk to them. I wasn't particularly interested in riding them. I had to ride them, but I didn't like it, and they were just my friends. So, and I had trees that I loved. I spent a lot of time talking to trees, so I just turned to nature. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of self-confidence until later in my life. I can remember when I was in my early 40s starting to study in Brisbane, where I moved to in 1996, the end of 1996, early 1997. I moved there, and I can remember joining to study social science. I have a degree in social science and a counselling degree. And I started that process because I didn't have a clue how I was going to survive. There was nothing familiar in the city. I had been sent to boarding school, but in Sydney rather than Brisbane. And I didn't know Brisbane very well. So I had to start somewhere. I started at college to help my son. I studied, you know, childhood trauma and things. And yeah, but I can remember the first class sitting in this group of people, and I felt like I was the only one naked in the room. You know, I had such low self-confidence in myself. I had low confidence in myself. But like you write in your chapter, I had confidence in myself as a mother. And, you know, I've had a really good look. Had confidence in myself as a mother. I had confidence in myself as a provider. I managed to work, study, and raise the boys pretty well on my own. And that was a bit hard. That took a while to understand and to trust that everything would there'd always be enough money. But I used to have the most wonderful dreams where this white horse would appear and would take me to places like the first dream, it took me to a big warehouse full of cereal packets on the shelf and all these tin food. And I got this message, there'll always be enough food to feed your children, because that was a big worry for me. And then I had another dream where the white horse was running beside me and chased this man with a briefcase and knocked him over, and all this money went all over the ground. I remember that dream. And I got this message, there'll always be enough money for you, you know, so it wasn't just food, it'd be wealth and I'd be taken care of. So those sorts of things helped me with my lack of confidence in how I was going to be a good provider. But I did have a lot of confidence in my capacity to manage a household, be a mum. I was really confident as a mother. I had a kind of good rapport with my children. And although they might tell you otherwise, you know.
But like anything, there was, you know, ups and downs like any relationship or family
Yeah.
dynamics.
Yeah, but I didn't ever feel like I couldn't manage to learn something. I had confidence in my capacity to learn, put it that way, and to grow. And I did have a trust in my journey. My mother was great like that. She taught us some really great slogans. And we went to Al-Anon, which was fantastic. When I was at boarding school, I was sent to Al-Anon once every couple of weeks to this car used to pick us up. There were quite a few of us, and we go and we learn all the slogans for AA families, you know, Al-Anon families. and they called it Alateen. So when I was 11, I went to boarding school, and when I was 13, I started at Al-Anon. And
Well,
they,
what's Al-Anon?
okay, so Al-Anon is anonymous. It's an anonymous program for families of alcoholics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Alateen is for teenagers of alcoholic families. So I used to love going. I didn't love going there. It was not something you'd love, but I learned so much. Like I learned a lot of slogans, like one day at a time, first things first. You know, things that really helped me understand how to manage life, because I didn't have very good, I had very low self-esteem still at that point in my life, in my teenage years. But those slogans were, I use them now every day, you know, like they
What
were
are some of the
amazing.
slogans that really stand out for you today? Like day by day. What are some of the slogans your mum taught you?
One day at a time, hand it over to God. That was a big one.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So, but then the serenity prayer, which is God, and you know, you can say Great Spirit or God or Goddess or whatever you want to use, universe. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Mm,
So I knew that one back to front and said it all the time. That was one I heard from Mum all the time.
mhm.
And easy does it is another one.
Okay, yeah.
You know, like there's just all these wonderful, and I made up a whole lot of slogans later. I have so many slogans, and they're a little bit like affirmations, short things, but you're not trying to convince yourself of something and affirm something. It's more about just a handy kind of like um, word word bite, sound bite that you can grasp hold of. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, well aware of those. My grandfather, who owned a cattle station in northern New South Wales, a place called Cottonhurst, just outside of Grafton, he used to say, "Keep your eyes and ears open. You know, a little bit of everything won't kill you." Were some of his favourites. So yeah, always be observant, and yeah, he taught me how to use my memory, and yeah, it was some fun times.
Yeah. And they seem to stick, don't they? Those kind of
Ooh,
that
yes,
advice, wisdom. It's wisdom, really,
it is. Yeah,
and tried and true.
yeah.
And I've noticed that about a journey of riches too, that a lot of people had wonderful, they use a lot of affirmations to get through. And of course, Louise Hay was the queen of affirmations. However, I discovered declarations, which were quite a step up from affirmations, and that's where my confidence started to grow. Where I just that and the shamanic way is you don't have to be positive about everything. You just have to be real and authentic. So
Mm,
you could use language other than everything being positive that you couldn't really like you could put some don'ts in there as well as do's. um, yeah, don't take anything personally. And some of these came from a shamanic teacher, Don Miguel Ruiz. So he teaches the
yeah,
medicine.
four agreements.
Yeah, the four agreements. I
One
learned
of
that
the
one.
agreements. Yeah, don't take things personally.
Yeah, that was a wonderful one. When I discovered that book, it was great.
Yeah.
But you know, I'd already started to develop those kind of agreements, declarations of truth, I call them, and they help you. Like a lot of people say, and I think I learned in NLP to kind of um, you look out for the positive, and then you can imprint that into your psyche um, to motivate you to be a better person, or to be able to create things more confidently. So you can actually have a role model or a mentor, and I learned that in a lot of the therapies that I studied, and I have taught that. But there's also that sense of what you don't want to be, you know, that can be so motivating and can build your confidence. Like I have a habit of eating too much chocolate. I know I can't eat chocolate. It can be really, I'm allergic to caffeine, actually am, but I give in to it every now and then. However, I have learnt, you know, I have seen people in my very close family use it in a very bad way, and it's very bad for their health. So I can say, you know, don't be like so and so, or, you know, I won't mention names because it's not very fair, but I can actually refer to somebody who I can see with a habit, and bring that to mind. I'm not going to be like that. So it's like a negative motivator rather than a positive motivator. So I've found that's been very good for building my confidence, because it's saying I'm better than that. I can do better than that. You know, like I don't want that habit. I'm not sure if I wrote about that in the book, but I do know that I practice that a lot, you know, to remind myself that I want to be a certain way. I don't want to be another way. And it is very good to have a positive reframe around everything. I know I get that, but it's also good to know if you continue a bad habit, it's going to lead into something that's not healthy. Yeah.
True, it's a very good point. Yes.
Being
We can learn,
realistic. Yeah.
yeah, we can learn just as much from negatives as we can positives. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so true. I mean, what I really took away from your chapter, I was considered learning disabled growing up, and one of your boys was considered learning disabled and didn't learn, like, really didn't grasp reading and writing until he was 11, if I memory
Yeah.
serves correctly. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember reading that in your chapter because you were 10 from
I was
memory.
10. Yeah, I was 10.
Yeah. And look where it's led you. Amazing. And he actually, you know, he has a degree in writing.
Yeah, that's
A degree in
very
communication.
cool.
He didn't actually read till he was 11. Nobody could teach him. He
Yeah,
had a learning style like you that
yeah,
nobody could grasp. And then I ended up having to develop a whole way of teaching him. And I taught him. It took me a year to teach him how to read very basic books. And,
yeah.
you know, I actually, when I put a drawing, I'm an artist, so I would draw, I'd break everything up into syllables, and I would draw a picture for each one. And then all he'd have to do is turn the card over, and he'd like a cat. I can't tell you now. I can't tell you. But I did 1,000 words. You think I'd remember one? But anyway, he would break it down into little sound bites, and then with pictures, and then he could actually, that's what these words mean, or these letters
Uh,
mean. And I mean, that was painful for him to have to learn that way. But I was creative in how I taught him. I used to do storytelling and pictures and drawing. He loved to draw and use lots of art. And I put the words above in his double bunk. He had a double bunk. So when he went to sleep, we'd go over, you know, I'd put my finger over certain words and he'd learn them. And then I learnt to use my finger and upside down, and he would follow my finger and read the words as I said them out loud. And then one night I do this. I used to give him books as a reward system. So whenever he had good behavior, I'd buy him a book, which sounds like that would have been a million books, but his behavior was pretty appalling most of the time. Not really, not really, but we did have challenges because he had this head injury. And he doesn't mind me talking about his story because he knows it helps people. And I would never make fun of him because it was agony for him. You know, like he was trying so hard to do the right thing, but he had this pressure in his brain. And we didn't realize till a long time what it was about. He had a brain tumor, as it turned out. But anyway, yeah, so I buy him a book. And then one night when I was reading to him, I said, I have to go and check dinner. I'll be back in a minute. And then he didn't call out. He didn't actually say, I said, call out when you're ready to read the next chapter, but he didn't call out. And then I sneaked back in and he was reading out loud to himself, and he actually could read fluently from that night. And he just went and he read all these books again on himself a couple of times, and he became an avid reader. And yeah, but I think I wrote in the book the story of when his behavior was so difficult because he had no control over his responses. And you know, there was an emergency situation, a crisis situation that I had to deal with. And I went out the front of the house on a rainy night and sat on the mailbox crying. And I just surrendered everything. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I cannot actually find a way to heal my son. I'm asking, you know, praying to, I call God, you know, other people would call, I call that same energy Great Spirit these days, but I just handed it over completely and said, if you heal my son, I will serve humanity till I die, you know. I made a deal, and I don't recommend it. It was always on the back of my mind that I couldn't change my plan because I'd made that deal. But I did follow through. I did it, and I had continued to do it. I didn't actually go after money. I went after healing and being of service and completely being shown the way. So I gave up study. I wanted to become a teacher at university eventually, and I couldn't, because I'd given my word. It got in the way, that need to be more. I had to stop that. I just had to stop and be in the present moment and become a really amazing present practitioner of healing. To do the deep spiritual work, and I did. I did. I went straight in, and I became a healing practitioner, counselor, and eventually teacher of shamanic wisdom, and still am. And I still remember making that deal. And my son, the very next day after making that deal, was cured from his anger and conflict that he had inside of himself. He didn't ever have another problem with that. We came across a food. It was actually preservatives in bread that he was allergic to. And the next day, I'd read this book 3 times and hadn't noticed that. And then this next day I noticed it. And I thought, why haven't I seen this before? It was veiled from me. Took the bread out of his diet, and he didn't ever have another anger tantrum or presentation. And for 2 years we had absolute bliss in the family. He was himself. He could read, you know, he could play music, he could do all the things he loved without any anxiety, because the preservatives have been completely taken. I'd taken all the other preservatives out, and they'd made a little bit of difference, but this made a huge difference because he ate a lot of bread. And and then 2 years down the track, he actually was diagnosed with a brain tumor after he nearly lost his sight. And they found he had a big, huge tumor on the back of his head, pressing on his visual cortex, part of his brain. So yeah, just had a meltdown. I had a meltdown, said, how come you're reneging on our deal? You know, that's why I don't recommend making deals. And I felt very let down for about 5 minutes. And then I realized I couldn't live without that connection, that sacred connection, that life didn't mean anything. And so I just continued the deal anyway without the cure. And it was quite a long time, another 7. So I had 8 years in isolation with my son, and then I had another 7 years in isolation while he healed the results of having surgery. And he had all sorts of problems. He had a stroke and lost the use of his right hand, and all sorts of things. But we got through it, and we got through it to the other side. And during that time, I learned to speak up to doctors, particularly. I learned to challenge, and and we learned to live with this disability, which brings me to the most beautiful writing in this book. Who's it by? I'll have to find
Kelly?
Kelly Graver.
Yeah, Kelly Graver, yes.
Chapter 14.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to read a quote?
Yeah, please. Yes.
So she says, I just could not believe that this was the gift at the end of the book, because, I was reading the whole book and every single chapter was a gift. And then I thought, you get to the end and you think it couldn't be any more. And just the last 2, including yours, were just extraordinary. But this one, she says, a pivotal part of my journey was learning to embrace the word disability. For so long, it had felt like a label drenched in negativity, something society equated with weakness, shame, or inadequacy. But as I faced my fears and reclaimed my sense of self, I began to see the word differently. Disability didn't make me less, it made me different. In that difference, I found unique strengths and perspectives that I could honour with pride. Learning to claim the word with dignity and self-respect became a powerful act of defiance against societal narratives and an essential piece of building my confidence. It was no longer a term to shrink from, but a badge of honour, a testament to the battles I had fought and the resilience I had built.
It's beautiful. That's a beautiful sentence. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought her whole, I was just like so, I can't think of the word, mesmerized by her writing. You know, it really hit home. Just extraordinary story. And some of the stories that came out of that book weren't about people necessarily out there helping others. Or out there, they all did, but it wasn't about how great they were or how successful they were. Like, you chose people, I don't know how you did it, John, but you know, you get some people who are just experiencing everyday heartache and
Yes.
building their confidence from the ground up, you know, incredible stories, beautifully written, every single one of them. So well done.
Well, thank you. And thank you to everyone that said yes. And thank you for trusting me and my team with your chapter. And it's just, yeah, I never thought I'd be in this position. And, yeah, a lot about my journey and what I moved through. And it's just, when you trust that divine guidance and, yeah, it's just allowing, yeah, just life to unfold a little more rather than from my perspective, trying to control it or just getting out of the way, and a lot of and just allowing my passion and natural inclinations of what bring me joy and what lights up my soul and spirit to guide it, to drive the bus a little more rather than having to have everything sorted out logically planned and controlled. Just getting out of my own way and just letting my follow your bliss type of thing. So yeah, quote Joseph Campbell. And the books are beautiful. It's so delightful, and the reviews. I don't know if you've had a chance. We've got close to 100 reviews, and they're just very insightful and just a really a beautiful window into the book without giving too much away. And kind of like what you did just there, reading an excerpt of Kelly's chapter.
I know the book did very well very quickly because you have a good structure in how you promote everything. However, I can see you've actually published, I think co-published, I'm not sure, you're a publisher, but you've published over 40 books, is that correct?
Yeah, but I'm not a co-publisher, so
Oh, you're a publisher.
our entity, Journey of Riches is with collaboration. Oh, well, it's just one entity, Journey of Riches, and it's me and my team. So I have
Yeah.
a couple of
But
assistants.
what I mean is you've written them with other authors. It's not like there's
Oh, co-written. The books are
multiple authors
co-written. Yes, they're
that
yeah,
write the
not
books too,
co-published,
aren't
but
there? Like
co-written.
it's a yeah.
One publisher,
Co-written.
many writers. Yeah.
Yeah.
One publisher, many
And
writers. Yeah, there are. It's an anthology, so it's a collection of.
anthology. I was trying to think of the word. Yeah, amazing. And I've been involved in 5 anthologies, and this is the most exciting, I have to say. It was wonderful. Yeah, really happy to have contributed, and congratulations to all the authors,
Yeah.
every single one.
Yes.
And I'll get to know this. I love reading, and I'll read it again and again. It's the sort of thing you can just read. And I can remember, actually not sure if I can allowed to say this, I didn't get permission, but I gave it to my partner to read. And then he came flying after reading my chapter. Oh my God, he said, it's hit the nail on the head. I've been trying to work out what's going on. Now I know. And he'd read something in that chapter. But it's the sort of book that you can just pick up and open, and there'll be wisdom in there.
Yes.
It'll be an amazing piece of wisdom that you'll find in amongst it all. So really highly recommended it for people. I'm actually I've ordered some books now for clients so they can, I've been telling everybody about it and haven't had the books because I've had other things going on, but now I have some books I can look forward to sharing that wisdom with people in this form. So very, very pleased about it because a lot of my workshops are about building self-confidence. They always have been in their own way, and about walking in spirit, walking and leading, living, loving and leading in spirit with confidence.
Yeah, leading, loving, and lead. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And will you write a little note to the person you're going to gift it to and sign it?
What a good idea. Yes, of
Right.
course.
Yeah, you get your own little personal note from the teacher or
Yeah.
facilitator with you.
Yeah.
I love doing that personally at book signings and things. And yeah, it's just so, yeah, just trusting the words that need to be written and trust that they will land for the person that you give it to. I feel it's just so, I don't know, it's a beautiful level of intimacy with the students. And so,
Yeah. And what I love about this book particularly is there's a lot of guidance in there that's solid. And you could get 15 different writers, and each one of them, there were lots of crossovers. Like I've written quite a few crossovers. Like every writer wrote about that, or just about every writer wrote about how it's an inward journey, not an outward journey, that's going to create the self-confidence. Most writers wrote about trust, like trusting in yourself. That was a big, and also authenticity. There are a lot of common features in the book that you could say, yeah, I read that chapter, I read that last chapter, but then something would turn up that would be different and unique. It's a story, or it's just an idea or a concept. And yours was, I mentioned this in the beginning, was there's a difference between self-confidence and confidence. Like confidence comes from experience, and you can have confidence in anything, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have self-confidence when you walk into a room, or self-confidence when you have to make a decision, or self-confidence within a relationship. There is a difference there, and I put it down there being 4 aspects of self where you can gain confidence. One is in spirit, which is what you're talking about with self-confidence, self-image, self-identity, and your higher self connection. And then there's the physical confidence, so having confidence in your body that it's going to help heal, that it will let you know when something's wrong. Lots of writers wrote about that your body is part of your psyche, that it's your heart, the physical heart, your blood, everything's part of that. And then confidence in relationships and being able to communicate. So that's the heart. Confidence in other people in your life. And then finally in the mind. So having confidence in mind. So that's the self-talk, that's relying on that positive self-talk and having an inner world of wisdom, that you've got the answers, trusting your intuition. So there's 4 aspects for me of confidence. Yeah. They all come together. Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty complete right there. So,
Yeah. I think this was the second writer, Sue, someone, I think was her name. She talked about that a little bit as well. I can remember thinking, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. Sorry, Emily Moon, I think it was. Yeah.
Emily Moon was chapter 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Body Talks. Linda. No, it was Linda.
Linda. Oh, yeah, Linda or Esso. Linda or
Yeah. Yeah, she talks about that, how the body talks. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and how if you don't listen to it, the body can shut down. She had
Yeah.
that meltdown at work and couldn't even, was oversensitive to Wi-Fi and all the rest of it. And, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I think I've had a lot to say, and I want to just
Well,
finish.
let me ask you a
Yeah.
question. What do you hope, what's one takeaway um, that you hope readers get from your chapter?
I think what comes to my heart in you saying that is straight away is to realize that their story is their story, their life, their mission is equal to everybody else's on the planet, like not to see themselves as less than in any shape or form, and not to see themselves as more than. You know, like it's like a sense of being able to flow and not to reach too high, but reach high enough to get you out of your mindset. I think of the wisdom of the giraffe, which is to reach for the best fruit on the tree, but also to be accepting of your patterns. You know, they wear the patterns outside, not inside. So knowing who you are, wearing those amazing patterns of the giraffe on the outside, being confident in who you are, not trying to change that in other than to grow it and to, you know, to retrieve all the best pieces of you and put them together again. Yeah, I don't know
love
if
that. What a great
yeah,
analogy. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah,
yeah,
I love that, and it ties into the theme of your chapter, Know Thyself, and um, yeah, wow, that's a great analogy of that inside and out.
yeah. There is an outside too, there is an inside, there's an outside, there's an above you, and there's a below you. They're the four worlds, and knowing how to move in between all those worlds is the shamanic way. Yeah, that's what we do. We're world travelers, and I can, you know, I can manage myself quite well in the world without, much better than I used to be able to. I spend a lot of time in the world within, but to have confidence, you need to be able to be yourself authentically in the world without, and even proud of who you are. You know, that's the lion medicine, having that pride. That's what they call their family of pride, having pride in yourself. And yeah, being the Leo or the lioness is just being strong in who you are and a leader, self-leadership. I
I
could talk
love
for
that.
another hour at least.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's great. Though. I really like that, though. It's like, yeah, just being proud of yourself, for everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. I mean, any which way you want to look at it, that it's all you, and, everything can be changed or transformed. And, but just owning all aspects of yourself is, there's a lot of beauty in that.
And look, honestly, I think your takeout too, what you said, what you ended up with, we need to have joy in our lives to really enjoy our lives. Um, do you remember writing about that? I think at the end, I can't remember, but it was,
Yeah,
uh,
I vaguely.
yeah.
I'm writing a whole bunch of. I'm writing a book about the power of transformation now, and I've since
Uh,
published a book about
okay.
self-esteem, living into self-esteem. So I do remember that chapter was very raw and vulnerable for me because I just laid it out, kind of threw myself under the bus, so to speak, of just being completely transparent in my journey and different aspects of confidence, and confidence that was more like arrogance, and maybe to mask my own insecurities of being like overconfident and arrogant and just feeling like
Yeah,
I was better than everyone else, as a protection mechanism. And how I dealt with that, yeah, was just incredibly healing for me, just to expose that aspect of myself,
yeah,
rather than suppress it. And yeah, it was very raw and vulnerable. It wasn't, trying to prove anything, but I was just laying it out in the hope that it would help someone else through their journey. And I feel that the majority of, I'd say all the chapters, that was the common thread and theme. And I think that's what something that you expressed earlier on, that no one was writing to impress. It was writing to really just share. Hey, this is my journey. This is what I learned. And maybe you can learn from that as well. Or maybe they can reflect aspects of your life and to help you bring that into awareness so you can process it, change it, transform it, or just recognize it and honor it. And I feel that
absolutely.
that's what a lot of the authors, all the authors did. It was a honoring of their past, present, and just accepting of those aspects. So an integration of sorts. And it was Emily Moon that said, this book is much more than a book about confidence. It really
Yeah.
was an integration of the various different selves that we move through in our journey of our life.
Yeah.
What I was true for me in my 30s and teenage years is completely different to what's true for me today.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember you talking about the arrogance now. I remember you had self-confidence, confidence, and arrogance. And yeah, so definitely you've moved through a whole lot of different chapters of your life, and you were very vulnerable in what you shared. It was amazing. And I remember you said something about just as long as you're making progress, it's okay. It
Progress
doesn't.
over perfection any day of the week.
Yeah, progress over perfection. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
how you
progress.
finished. That's how you finished, I think. I actually
Yes,
did
progress over
mark
perfection.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, focus on your journey, knowing that self-confidence will grow when you consistently put in the effort to evolve and push past your limits. Your future self will thank you for the confidence you show today. So true. Um, yeah, so I think the great thing about this book is that every single person who picks it up will find themselves in there. You get attracted to what you're meant to read. And recently I've got this new thing going on. I did read it in here and I can't remember who it was, but something about if you're meant to have it, it won't pass you by. I wish I could remember who said that, but that was amazing for
Yeah.
me. And it stuck with me, like if I'm meant to have this in my life, it won't pass me by. And I realized that with relationship. I went for 20 years without a relationship. And
Wow.
that was because
Is
I
that in your younger years?
was in my prime. Really, I was in my late 30s, 40s, in that time when you
Right, early
actually,
40s. Wow. So you went
yeah.
20 years without a relationship. Is that because you felt so wounded from the marriage that collapsed?
No, it was because I made a commitment to be of service and I couldn't see how I could fit it in with everything else I had to do. And I think that was the backstory I had going on. I was a dedicated mum and, like I had to find a way to keep my son alive. Well, they didn't expect him to live till he was 20, and so I just sort of put every effort into committing to that, to my service, and didn't really go looking. I was yearning, which wasn't very healthy, and I felt a void, but I didn't let it get me down or stop me from what I was really there to do. Um, and then I had this sort of a couple of years ago, my mother passed away and made a lot of space in my life. I had a lot of people service, probably to the extreme going on, I think, and including my mum and caring for her. And I cared for my father before that, my auntie, my uncle in amongst it. And I just sort of made room for me. And I attracted the most wonderful soulmate into my life, the perfect match.
And you're
And
writing a book together, is that right?
yeah, we're writing a book together.
90,000 words or something, what you're up to.
Yeah,
Okay. It could
yeah,
well be two books, who knows?
yeah. It's an amazing book, actually. It's fantastic. We loved writing it. We wrote it together every weekend, and it took us a year, and then it's taken us another year to edit. It's not just writing, you have to edit, and then it's going to be published hopefully by the end of this year, because we want to use that a presentation that we're having at the end of the year to have it for people, available for people. But that's another story. So
Well, how can people get
yeah.
in? How can people get in touch with you? And
Oh yeah. Well, I have a website that,
okay,
yeah, it's a lovely website that was gifted to me by one of my sons, and he taught me how to use it. It's Kajabi, and they're quite tricky, and I never thought I'd be able to work it out, but I'm quite creative, and I did. I managed. I love, and I do most of it myself, all of it myself, really. So www.shamanicpathandpractice.com. We'll have to write it somewhere for people, but you can put
yeah, we'll put
Heather.
it in the link. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
share your bio and
yeah.
yeah.
It's in the book at the back.
Yes, yeah, there you
And
go. Get a copy of the book. You can get it in paperback, audio, audible version, or of course an ebook. And the ebook is only $1.99. So, and all
I know.
proceeds from the books go to Jules Children's Home.
Which is a
then
great
also I
motivator. Yeah.
discovered during the pandemic when I was living in Ahmed, Bali, and it's in a place called Amyapura, and it's way out of the ways. They don't have a website, but they do have a Facebook page and a link through one of their supporters. They've created a link for them where you can actually donate to them directly. But last year we built rooms for their children's home. They have a school there now as well, and so yeah, Journey of Riches, the books, has been supporting them since I discovered them, really through divine intervention. Um, yeah, it's just a beautiful story, and it's really close to my heart. So,
Well, it was a great attraction to write for you for that reason, for this project, because it touched my heart greatly that, you know, the proceeds from Amazon will be going towards that
yes,
orphanage and those children, which is amazing, giving them a second chance. So another
yes,
good reason to purchase through that way. And if people are taking journeys with me personally, I'll have it available on my website as well.
yeah,
Um, yeah. But anyway, John, I really am very grateful for the whole thing. And when you asked me, I thought, I've done this before. Do I need to do it again? But there wasn't a
oh,
hesitation there. I did know straight away it was the right thing to do.
yeah.
And I'm actually thinking maybe about doing it again and again.
Yeah, well, we'd love to have you. I'd love to have you back. I'd love to have you back.
It's
Yes.
such an adventure and such a
It is.
wonderful way to, you know, to journey with other people.
And the
And
other authors that you meet along the way, and
yeah,
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 with our book, there was authors from, of course, Australia, United States, UK, Ireland. So it was, yeah, really nice collection.
yeah, right across the world. Very
Yes,
interesting.
yes.
Yeah. However, I have got about 4 or 5 books to write myself
Oh,
before I
yeah, yeah,
do
that's the
another one.
thing. Yeah, no, I'm sure if something opens up that you'll reach out. But yeah, I would love to collaborate with you if that ever aligns. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you very much for interviewing me around the book and for sharing so much of your life in the book,
yeah.
which was
Wow.
very inspiring. Yeah,
Thank,
amazing. And everybody else,
thank you.
my fellow authors, yeah.
Yeah, well, you're just a beautiful mirror for others, and a way shower and empowerer, and yeah, just a beautiful resource for people to lean on if
Mm.
they need to.
Thank you. I teach them how to travel the worlds and how to become their own healer. I don't
Uh,
actually, I'm not very good at just doing it to people. Like a
no,
lot I teach them how to do it for themselves. So cord pulling, you know, entity clearing, self-healing over your chakras. I mean, I teach people what I do to them as well. So they walk away very well equipped to continue their own journey. Yeah. So I think that's what we're all moving into, is this combination of helping each other, you know, calling out the people we need to help fulfill our dreams, that we're not on our own. Everybody wrote that in this book. Everybody said that. You know, have the confidence to ask for help if you need it.
you don't have to go through it alone. You don't have to solve it by yourself. Yeah, that's definitely been. I think it's a big one for me, and I feel it
Yeah,
is
me
for
too.
many people in a lot of ways. That we feel like we have to solve it ourselves. That we might be putting people out and burden people, whereas the opposite is true in a lot of cases. You know, with the right people and the right tribe, that people are just more than willing to yeah, to be of service.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Heather. Thank you for your time
Thank
today.
you,
And
John. Thank you so
yeah,
much. I
great to speak
appreciate
to
it.
you. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Anybody who tuned in,
If you'd
it
like
was
to
really
get more of these, please subscribe to our channel, and we'll send them your way.
absolutely. Thank you.